Bring the heart.
It's time to get loud.
Let's go! Because this is Betfred Super League.
Bring it on.
Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped me ear off. What do you think?
Well, it's a different Eddie and Stevo the podcast this week, but in one way it's just the same because we're here with the support of our friends at Betfred. The old man himself is actually taking a breather this week, having a well-deserved rest, having battled bronchitis and the floods in Sydney in recent weeks. So without him, where do we turn? Well, we've a unique man to meet. His name is Chris Berry, who hails from Leeds. Like Stevo, a proud Yorkshireman. And though Stevo has written 1.5 books, I wrote half of his second one. Chris is a rugby league fanatic and a best-selling author. His third book, Tough World, follows on from Tough Season and Tough Season in the Sun, all of which follow a rugby league player called Greg Duggan through all sorts of scrapes, and his local rugby league club even gets into Super League. And then Greg himself is pitched into World Cup action. How fitting that is in this of all years. Well, I spoke with Chris Berry to find out more about him and his books. First of all, where does the inspiration come from?
I'm a big rugby league fan, Eddie, and I'm from Hull originally, so Hull KR always been my team. Always went in the eras when it was the late 70s and early 80s when we had the best team in rugby league rather than Super League at the time. So that was one of the things. The other side was I'm a big reader as well as being a writer and journalist anyway. And I wanted to write, I'd written lots of other things, people's biographies, autobiographies. And I'd thought to myself, have I got the capacity to write a novel? And what would I want it to be about in the first place? Well, I thought, well, use something that you're familiar with and that you like and that you enjoy. And then I got into crime thrillers, and one of the best crime thriller writers you'll know is Dick Francis, and his horse racing crime thrillers were absolutely brilliant. And I thought, well, why can't we use rugby league as a backdrop as opposed to horse racing as a backdrop? So that's kind of how it started. It's gone from there. So now I've got 3 out, and I came up with this character called Greg Duggan, who's my sort of main character in all 3 novels.
Indeed so, yeah. I mean, they say that everyone's got a book in them somewhere. You've got 3 and possibly 4, well, more than that, because I know you've done a load of autobiographies, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, so Greg Duggan, he's the main character in your books. Now then, here's the question. Who's he based on?
Well, it's certainly not me, put it that way, but it is, based upon all of the people that you might expect. Put it this way, he's a loose forward, right? He's got a granite jaw. He's 6'3", and a mass of black hair. And so he's a good-looking bloke who's could be lots of people rolled into one. If I was thinking about certain people, I don't have exactly, lots and lots of people in mind. Obviously, I would think Gavin Miller from my times of the late 70s, early 80s, mid-80s time. But equally well, people like Dennis Betts, and then today's players as well, elements of all. Certainly he would have to be, for the action hero that he is, who's been compared to a rugby league version of Jack Reacher, action hero kind of guy. Well, we pick up Greg in each of the books where he's in a difficult position, either through his love life, which is very complicated, or is through what he's had befall him to do with his club. His first club he plays for is in the north of England. He plays for a club called Hopton Town, which, strangely enough, I was writing a book and I suddenly found Upper Hopton and Lower Hopton. And I thought, oh dear God. And I tried to come up with a different club. But anyway, it was a completely different one. But the Hopton are struggling. They're at the foot of basically what we would term League One. And I won't, like I said, I won't give any spoilers away, but there are lots of things that start happening around. And these really are crime thrillers. I use the kind of things in each of the stories that are things that you could realistically see having happened in the sometimes murky world of rugby league, and sometimes, where you find that it's high-powered and you think there are people in ivory towers and the like. And so I've used those kind of things as the idea. But when he's on his, the best way I can describe how he is when he's on his uppers at times is it's a bit like a Bruce Willis in Die Hard, where you see Bruce Willis at the start and everything's gone wrong again for him. And then he's got to sort of gradually fend it through and come good. And so Greg is a very good loose forward rugby league player. And also he's put into lots of these compromising situations where he's got to fight his way out of them. And so for anybody who likes action and thriller and crime and rugby league, then it mixes them all together. And I really enjoy doing it. I also loved, a bit like yours and Stevo's commentaries, Eddie, as well. I mean, I listened to those for years. I equally well listened to BBC Radio Humberside and the other BBC commentaries. So I use radio commentary and TV commentary to link it when it's the rugby league action as well. So there's kind of a lot of phrases that you might then think when you read a book, do you know, I think I heard that by a commentator some years ago.
Oh, well, listen, we better not tell Stevo about that. He'll be sending you a bill.
Yeah, I did think about that when I was saying it.
Well, I know in your author's note on the book, and the book is fascinating. It really is. It's a great read. In your author's note, you share the fact that Greg Duggan and all the characterizations, they are fictitious, but you also have got names of family members and friends of yours, and also now friends who've shown up because they've read the books and they've got in touch with you. So there'll be people there who will have a great affinity with these books, won't there?
That's it. That's what you're hoping. And I just like doing it. I like putting people in. I mean, a lot of the names are made up, but then, coming through it, I suddenly think, oh, he'd be a great one. I'll put him in for this or her in for this. And some people who've really have been very supportive right from the start, people who I don't know, who have read the books and have then become great followers of me. I've thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if I, put them in, so they become a character in my books as well. And I quite like doing that. I think Dick Francis did that a little bit, and I'm almost certain that plenty of other authors have done similar kind of things in the past. I mean, if you ever become a Lee Child, then obviously what you do is you go on these, dinners or whatever, and then you get people to pay to be a character in your book. I'm not quite at that stage yet, Eddie. Put it that way.
I'm sure those days will come. I really am. I'm positive that someone will pay you to go on. Here's a tenner. Put me in your next book.
It'd be great, wouldn't it? The latest One Tough World, just so that people, was originally, it came out just before Christmas, and the idea originally, of course, was that with it calling Tough, the first one's Tough Season, the second Tough Season in the Sun, and the third one Tough World. And Tough World is set in Australia. I wanted to set it in a World Cup setting for this time. So Greg has gradually been from a League One player in Tough Season to Super League in Tough Season in the Sun to then involved in a World Cup. I won't say anything more than that at the moment. But it's set in Australia, and it's also set on the South Pacific islands of Vanuatu. I've used the locations, as I did for book 2 in Tough Season in the Sun, where it's set in Lanzarote. I said, you might think, what the hell is a rugby league club doing in Lanzarote? Well, that was basically this. I was running, as I do a lot of running, in Lanzarote when I was on holiday there a couple of times. And I saw this gap in between these two buildings, and I thought, wouldn't it be just the oddest, strangest, and most ridiculous of things if a rugby league ground was built here? And I did think, well, who would sanction that? And, between you and me, you will well know, there will be certain people maybe who might think, oh, that's a good number for us. Yeah, we can all get holidays out of this.
Absolutely. Well, we're nearly there with Perpignan, aren't we, and Toulouse? Great holidays down there if you want to go and follow the game now. But I know that clubs have in the past gone to Lanzarote, to the big training camp there.
And that plays a part in the book as well, Eddie, because I do my research, obviously, on the things, and what I try and do is find the different places. And it was a very pleasant surprise once I decided the location was going to be in Lanzarote as well, that I found that very place. And so that plays a part, and some of the characters, fictitious characters, are based there as well. So, and also I thought anybody who's going on holiday, it's a great holiday read. And similarly, the Australia one and the latest one, Tough World, I've certainly beefed up the number of murders as well. So
you've been to these places. That's the thing. You've been to Vanuatu, haven't you? Places that you've fallen in love with yourself. And how fitting, by the way. I know it was for 2021 when the World Cup should have been on, but how fitting that the World Cup theme is running through this current book.
Well, that's right as well, and that's what I'm hopeful now that the book's selling. All three books are selling well, but this particular one is doing very, very well at the moment. And I'm hoping that even more people from they're not. You don't have to be a rugby league fan to read the books. It's not. That's not 100% necessary. But of course, rugby league people are going to like it specifically because it's got rugby league background, and there aren't any other crime thriller writers out there writing with rugby league as the backdrop, so
that was my next question. That's my next question. There aren't many authors who admit to being, or indeed are, well known for being rugby league fans. So you have got a market there that is perfect for you. There's thousands of people who like the game, and if they like a bit of crime, like a bit of thrills, and everything else that goes on, perfect read.
It's a niche, and I think that the Australian market as well, which is something that we've not really pursued as yet. I don't think the Great Northern Books, who are my publisher, but the Australian market is certainly well worth going to as well, especially since I've based, Tough World over there. But the World Cup was a major thing. My son lives in Australia. He's lived there 10 years. He's got a wine shop in Byron Bay. And so that's why Byron Bay is involved there as well. And we went 11,000 miles out to see Russ in Byron Bay. And then after 3 days, he got us on a plane to go 1,700 miles out to Vanuatu because he decided he wanted a holiday within a holiday. And we had the most fantastic time. The place I've used as the resort is called Breakers near Port Vila on Vanuatu, and it's just idyllic. And so I put the English national team using that as its base because I went for the old expanding countries routine, the emerging countries. And I looked at Vanuatu to check that they definitely did have a rugby league team, national team, and they did. So, and I saw what rating they were in it, and I think they rated something like 28 in the world or whatever, So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I got them and they'd managed to get through to the, to the opening rounds of the World Cup finals. And so there's some amazing scenes there. And I also picked up on a really, really great singer called Vanessa Kwai. And she is like a reggae type singer over there. And she actually, you possibly know this already, Eddie, but the Emerging Nations had an Emerging Nations final in Australia. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, something like that. And and Vanessa sang At It. And again, that sort of fitted amazingly because I didn't know that in the first place until I started writing it. And so I built her into it as the halftime entertainment.
What an idyllic life you lead, Chris. You have a son who runs a wine shop in Byron Bay. You go to Australia, obviously, because he's down there on a regular basis. You then fly to the Pacific Islands, and then you start writing books about it.
Well, put it this way: when Greg first, I won't give the whole game away, but obviously he gets called up. He's not part of the team in the first place, but there are reasons why he ends up getting called up. Put it that way. I just had a ball writing the. I have a ball writing the books, Eddie. I find them I make them great fun, whilst at the same time with lots of realism in there as well, so that people who are rugby league fans, people who do go crime thriller territory, will know what I'm trying to do with them. And honestly, the reviews I had have been great. The first book, Tough Season, was nominated for a Crime Writers Association Dagger Award, which is what Dick Francis and Anne Cleves, who writes the Shetland books and the Vera books and things like that.
Wow.
They've won that in the past. I got to the nomination stage, which was pretty nice anyway.
Oh, well, you're in exalted company, aren't you? Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've written for the Yorkshire Post for, 20 years or more? You live in Leeds now.
Yeah.
Born in Hull, and you're a Hull Kingston Rovers fan and a staunch Yorkshireman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I have to say, Tough Season, I made a point that Hopton Town is neither Yorkshire nor Lancashire nor Cumbria for that matter. And it is because I thought if I mention Yorkshire or Lancashire as a team, I'll lose half my rugby league audience in one fell swoop.
Of course you will.
So I made it a Pennine club. It was a Pennine club. That was the best I could do.
Right down the middle.
I'm a staunch Yorkshireman. I was the kind of guy that, when families used to go onto Scarborough Beach and take it over, I was very fortunate. I've had 22 cousins altogether, and there were 17 of us that were male. So the cousins plus my uncles and my dad would, and not being sexist here, but it was in the time when it was all male. We would, and I think some of my female cousins played as well. We would, a bit like Michael Parkinson, we would take over part of the beach with our own Bury cricket games and Bury football and Bury rugby league and the like, So it was great fun. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, as I say, you are a Hull Kingston Rovers fan. What do you think of them? I'm
not one of these who necessarily subscribes to the Tony Smith effect in that, when the announcement was made of his not staying for next season. I'm not quite certain that made the whole difference or not to the way things have gone. I think it was just injuries to vital players at vital times. And I think that was probably the biggest thing. And if you look back now at the people who are coming back, we're getting a good win every now and again, and then we're getting a poor defeat. But it's like all these leagues these days, a bit like in the Premiership in football and in Super League. You get the top sides, and the top sides can beat each other up. And then from about 6th or 7th down in the Premier League, same with 4th or 5th down in Rugby League, in Super League. But it could change automatically. It just depends on what your run of games are, I think, against the teams that are about the same level as you. I think where Rovers have done well is the signings that they appear to have made ready for next season.
I'll just go back to the Tony Smith decision. It was a strange time to make the decision, Chris. You'd beaten Hull in the derby. You had a full house. You were in the semi-final of the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
You were 80 minutes away from Wembley. Then, boom. Everything went wrong from then. And I sitting on the outside and looking in, and it's interesting to talk to a Rovers fan because I talked to lots of Wellington, Wigan, Saints on this side of the hill. I can't get over the fact that he made the decision when he did, because he looked absolutely at it. He was on top of it all.
I know it did, didn't it? And I mean, all I know is my brother Dave was a coach of Telford Rugby League quite a few years ago, and Dave lives near Penistone, and Tony lives that way on. And Dave's has said to me, and Dave's my brother and my other brother Matt were all staunch Hull KR fans. And I'm sure Dave would tell you that Tony is such a nice guy, and I'm sure you know that as well. Such a nice guy. But there are things that just change things. I don't know what fully happened. Nobody, I don't think, really knows what fully happened. Yes, I think it possibly did have a slight effect to the way things were. But I still subscribe to the theory that it was overall, when you look at the injuries that we had, Mikey Lewis was out, and he was this inspirational, half that we've got at the moment, a young guy who's a Hull born and bred guy through and through. Yeah. Jordan Abdul went as well, another Hull guy through and through as well, and Coote was not quite on it at the time because he'd been injured as well, and we lost our big red machine. We lost the spine of the side, and then no disrespect to some of the other guys that were there, but we had a unit that had been playing well together. I mean, there is another theory with all this, which I think a lot of rugby league clubs sometimes say but don't say, and that is that you'll get a club that looks at where the fixtures are and say, oh, we've got Huddersfield in the Challenge Cup semi-final. And then they just automatically think the name Huddersfield and think, well, we should be able to beat them. And it's totally wrong. It's the wrong theory again. Huddersfield, I mean, McQueen is playing out of his skin at the moment, and the rest of the team as well. And they have an excellent side. And the great thing about my home team is that they are it is a proper family club that is trying to get its house in order in the right way. That's the reason why we've got the guys who've been at the helm for us now, who've got Hull KR coursing through their veins and wanting to do. Neil Hudgell has got to be probably one of the most loyal people to be at the helm of a club that rugby league has ever had.
You're right, and it's cost him a fortune.
People don't think about that, and maybe there's no reason why they should, but to my mind, people see it and they see Neil's done a great job. If they saw how much had been ploughed in and what it takes to build something, to make sure that it's right and that the foundations are there. And what Hull KR has got at the moment, regardless of anything else, is it has its foundations right. And what they are now trying to do is get it right. I still think Tony Smith, by the way, I think he was the best thing ever for us at the time in which he arrived, because it allowed us to start getting. Tony is, as we all know, very, very well known for getting things across the right kind of way and getting teams sorted out. He's done it with Huddersfield, done it with Warrington, done it with Leeds, and he's done it again with Hull KR.
You've got a fantastic fan base. They turn up, hail, rain and snow, and they watch and they enjoy and they create a fantastic atmosphere. And the club now owns its own ground. It owns 15 acres around the place, and they can hopefully now do what they want in the future.
Well, that's what I mean about the whole thing about, getting foundations right and making sure things are good for the future. I'm sure the most important thing and I'm sure this is the same for Warrington, for Wigan, for St Helens, is homegrown players and bringing homegrown players through that are quality enough to play for your side and then having that conveyor belt of them. We had that in the 80s, and then we had that a little bit in the late 80s, We had it with some really great players, Mike Fletcher, Paul Fletcher, Wayne Parker, those kind of people. But then somehow along the way, we lost our way a bit. And that's where Neil Hudgell came in, and it's him that's, I'm a great believer that he's the best thing that ever really happened to Hull KR. Whilst Tony Smith has been great for 4 years, he's done a good job. He's got a record, as you know, with Tony of generally only sticking around with a club for about 4 seasons anyway, So he does a job, he gets them going again, and then perhaps he's looking at the next one to do,
And you're right, getting the junior development right and signing quality international players. That's the key. That's the key to it all. Look, the rugby league chat is fascinating, but you've not just written novels about rugby league and about crime. You've done autobiographies as well with some of the biggest name stars in the business. Tony Christie, Joe Longthorne, Bruce Jones, better known as Les Battersby of Coronation Street. Now, I'm a massive Corrie fan.
Right.
I used to love Les Battersby. I mean, he could be a Greg Duggan, to be fair. But what sort of bloke is he?
Bruce is a really nice fella. He has done some great work, not just Coronation Street. He had a couple of good films. He did a Ken Loach film, which was absolutely brilliant. And he did another one set in Blackpool, which is a little bit off the wall, but he acts it really, really, really well. Bruce is great. He lived in Conwy when I wrote the book on him. It's about sort of 10 years ago now that I wrote Bruce's book. But yeah, great guy. And he's he's one of these guys that, he'll go down to his local pub, or did in Conwy when I was with him, and he'd say, come on, I tend to do my interviews for people's books so that I can get their flavour, their voice, their vocabulary, so that it's not me writing it as me. Obviously, it's got to be of them, and I want people. That's why I get engaged by people to write their books.
I'm sure.
Bruce I do them in about sort of 4-hour stints with people at a time, and usually by the time you've done a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, people can be a bit on the wane. You've got to keep your concentration levels up for the whole thing. And so with Bruce, he would say about lunchtime, and this is what people will remember about him, it fits for his Coronation Street character as well. He'd say, come on, go down to the pub. So he'd go down there, and with Bruce, he'd pop into his local down, near the harbour there, and we'd pop in. And Conway's a seaside resort, so you'd start off in there, and he'd get a drink. Both get a drink, that's fine. I don't drink that. I like a drink, but I don't drink that much, certainly on lunchtime anyway. But then typically you're in a pub in Conwy, and there'll be a couple in there that are maybe in their 50s or 60s or 70s or whatever. And the kind of thing that happens, you'll have got it when you're in a pub somewhere. You can see people nudging each other saying, it's him, and then the woman will sort of dig her guy in the ribs and say, go and buy him a drink, So they'd go up and buy him a drink, and then Bruce would be very acceptant of it. So he'd suddenly be on his second pint. But because Bruce is a nice guy, he would then buy a pint back for them.
Good on
and get another one. So he'd have 3 by that time. And then somebody else in the pub that's come in that didn't realise what had gone on before goes through the same routine. And so you end up, he's had about 5 pints on a lunchtime.
I bet the autobiography takes a different slant then. How long do these things take? You say you do 4-hour slots with them. I'd imagine it's more than one 4-hour interview to do a full autobiography about somebody.
I tend to do overall it works out in between 30 to 50 hours worth of interviewing, something like that. Depends how big the book's going to be. Because, when you're doing people like Bruce and people like Joe Longthorne and Tony Christie, those kind of guys, people want to read the whole of their life story and the like. I do biographies for other people who just pay me to write their books for them as well, who are not necessarily big names, but they'll probably be maybe 80 pages short of the high profile guys, not because they haven't had an interesting life, because some of them have had a fabulously interesting life. The other guys, Tony Christie and Joe Longthorne, I've got to say, Tony Christie, lovely bloke, really, really nice guy, the sort of guy that you can just have a pint with, doesn't matter who you are. Lovely wife, Sue, been together right the way through his whole career, and they are beautiful people. And he's just got such a fabulous voice, even now in his late 70s. I think he's 79 now. And it is just amazing voice. The other guy, Joe Longthorne, is from Hull as well. And Joe was probably, I like a bit like novels. I like stories that are, have incredible highs and also incredible lows. And Joe, bless him, passed away nearly 3 years ago now. And writing his book was an absolute joy. It really, really was. The man was a lovely. I don't know whether you ever saw him. Did you, Eddie, at all? Joe
yes,
Longthorne?
I did. Yes, I did. And in my Radio Merseyside days, a guy called Billy Butler.
Billy, loved him. Yeah.
He promoted the life out of Joe and Joe Longthorne.
Yeah.
And what a voice! What a fantastic voice he had.
Absolutely amazing. Whilst a fabulous voice, an absolutely fabulous entertainer.
Yes.
When he hit this, I saw him. You get these things, don't you? It's a bit like when you're not on stage and then you hit the stage. When you're not on a rugby league ground and you hit the rugby league turf, you change. There's that light bulb that comes on you. As soon as he walked onto that stage, it was bing.
Yes.
And he was electric. It honestly was. I saw him so many times, and I was very fortunate that not just that I wrote his autobiography, but I'm a singer, guitarist, have my own band, play as a solo act as well. Joe invited me to be his support act on tour. I did it for 2 years, and then I did a few others with him after that as well. But I did a 40-date UK theatre gig tour in front of 1,000 people a night, generally. And it was just the most amazing thing. And I would come off and I'd get the great Joe Longthorne, saying to me, what are they like? What's the audience like, Chris?
Wow. I tell you what, Chris, you've got some strings to your bow. You really have. I didn't know you were in a band. I didn't know you were a singer, but I know you released in 2018 a CD, didn't you? Long Hard Road, including
that's right.
12 of your own songs.
Yeah, that's right.
What else do you do? I mean, blimey, you do everything by the sound of things.
I tell you what I don't do, Eddie. I don't do wallpapering. I don't do gardening. Right?
Me neither.
I don't do painting because I'm one of these guys that gets very frustrated if there's something I can't do. And I remember only too well years ago trying to hang wallpaper or whatever, and I'm talking a lot of years ago now, right? And I would get that frustrated. I would not punch the wall, right? But I would hit the wall with my clenched fist with the side of it. It would hit that little bone on your wrist, right? I would go totally white and I need to go and lie down.
I tell you what, apart from the fact that you're a great writer, a great singer, that you've spoken to all these fantastic people, we have a lot in common because I tried to build once one of the MFI self-build wardrobes. I think IKEA has now taken over that mantle. And I was halfway through, the damn thing was wobbling all over the place and I put my foot through the back of it.
I've done one great thing was in between our lounge and dining room on one of the places that we're at. We had these wooden doors and the like in between the two, and we decided we wanted to take them out. Now any normal person would get a screwdriver and unscrew things or whatever, so I just decided that I would kind of launch my foot at it, right? Okay. So I launched it, hit the door, the door comes off the side of the piece, or what? I must have slightly taken it out anyway, and landed, and I'm going, oh my God! And he went straight onto the dining table and took a chip out of it.
I bet your name was Mud.
My name is always Mud.
Chris, what next? What next for you? You know, I know. I think A Tough Season, The French Connection, that's book number 4. Is that about to come out, or what about it? So there will be more of Greg Duggan, yeah?
There will be, yeah. I've had, great feedback from the readers and the like, and there is going to be a third French Rugby League club that enters Super League.
Brilliant.
Right? There you go. So that's kind of what's going to be, and the shenanigans that go along with any of that I can make up, obviously, but also can be based a little bit on reality. And there's going to be quite a bit for Greg to have to cope with in France. No spoilers, Eddie. No spoilers.
No. I'm sure he will prevail and go on and on and on. Chris,
yeah.
Fascinating to talk to you. A marvellous life, wonderful books, great music, great fun. And you could even do a travelogue, the number of places that you have visited. Thank you so much for your time, and very best of luck for the future.
Thanks, Eddie, and to you and Stevo too. It's a joy to be speaking with you, and it was always a joy to listen to you both on Sky.
That's very kind. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Cheers, Eddie. Take care.
Chris Berry, whose publisher is Great Northern Books, based in Bradford. And the 4th Greg Duggan crime thriller, Tough Season, The French Connection, will be out soon. Chris had quite a story to tell, I hope you'll agree. Next week we're back to normal, and Stevo will be joining us once again, nicely refreshed after his week off. Till then, it's goodbye, and as ever, thank you for listening to Eddie and Stevo, the podcast.